Now on BBC One, a look at the latest news with Moira Stewart. It's 6 o'clock.
The UN says the refugee crisis on the Rwanda-Zaire border is absolutely catastrophic. But relief flights had to be suspended this afternoon when the airport at Goma came under fire. Israeli troops in Gaza have shot dead 2 Palestinians in the worst rioting since self-rule began in May. And Zimbabwe's Nick Price has just won the Open at Turnberry. Good evening. The United Nations has appealed for an immediate ceasefire in Rwanda to avert a humanitarian disaster as refugees flee to Zaire. But rebel troops are continuing their advance on Gisenyi, the last major town still held by government forces. Hundreds of thousands of refugees are still flooding across the border to Goma. The UN says the situation there is absolutely catastrophic, but has had to suspend aid flights after the airport came under attack.
They're calling it a camp. In fact, it's simply the place where the refugees have stopped walking, too tired to go on. The whole area is covered in volcanic rock, but these are a desperate, broken people.
Well, I mean, basically it's like hell on earth. It's volcanic rock everywhere. I mean, just look at this. I just picked these rocks up. I mean, it's just totally hard. You can't dig latrines. You can't find water here. You can't dig graves. There's no shelter. There's no food. There's just nothing.
Some relief agencies are setting up now. Inevitably, disease is beginning to spread. There's dysentery, dehydration, cholera is endemic in the area. I can't remember a time or a place that compares with this. Literally, a sea of people, life reduced to its basics. It's as if Rwanda were purging itself after the evil days of genocide. Still, there's little chance of these people going back soon, not while the rebel RPF is advancing. The Rwandan government army appears all but defeated. Soldiers have crossed the border all day, fleeing the bombardment by the RPF. And in the last hour, a number of mortars have landed in and around Goma airport, inside Zaire. There's panic among the refugees. As ever, they are the innocent victims. French troops at the airport have been put on alert, and we've been told not to move across town tonight. George Alagaya, BBC News, Goma.
Palestinians and Israeli troops have fought running battles in the Gaza Strip and the worst clashes since Palestinian self-rule came into force in May. 2 Palestinians were shot dead and 100 wounded after violence flared up at the Erez border crossing, which is controlled by both Israeli and Palestinian checkpoints. Several Israeli troops were wounded when Palestinian police opened fire.
It all began early this morning. Thousands of workers trying to get into Israel began to riot. Many had wanted to go from the Palestinian self-rule area into Israel without the right papers. As the disturbances intensified, shooting began. Palestinians claimed the Israelis started it.
Did the Israelis fire into the crowd?
Yeah, I saw it.
You saw the Israelis fire?
Everyone here saw the Israeli shot 2 Palestinians.
Yeah.
Whoever fired first, the Israelis say they came under attack from men in civilian clothes. Some of the Palestinian police then took their opportunity to shoot at Israelis. The chaos was such that in some places the troops took cover together and later shot at one another. With bullets and petrol bombs flying, the Israelis took the decision to bring in armoured vehicles. Palestinian police tried to stop the stone throwing with mixed results. Many hours after the disturbances had begun, reinforcements from a better disciplined Palestinian unit arrived and restored calm. Israel's army commander blamed them for not acting sooner.
It's clear that the responsibility is upon the Palestinian police that this morning failed to live up to what both sides are expected as a result of the agreement.
As both sides licked their wounds, the Palestinians called for international observers and internal inquiries, an apparent recognition that both sides were not blameless. Inevitably, there will be ugly recriminations after an incident like this, but the Israeli and Palestinian authorities have invested enormous political capital in the peace process and that's why they have to make the security here work better. Mark Urban, BBC News, at the Erez checkpoint.
Here, the 22-year-old woman charged with abducting baby Abby Humphries will appear before Nottingham magistrates tomorrow. 2 people arrested with her have been released without charge. Abby was reunited with her parents yesterday, 15 days after she was kidnapped. Mike Mackay reports.
The Welcome Home banners had been pinned up around the Humphries family home today. There was one from an Italian neighbour. The family themselves were avoiding the spotlight, but a special service of Thanksgiving at their local church was celebrating their joyous reunion. The minister said Abby's safe return had brought a national sigh of relief. That's still the predominant mood in the city, but away from the celebrations, Nottinghamshire police were being asked hard questions about their conduct of the inquiry. Neighbours say officers called twice at a house in Woollerton before returning in the early hours of yesterday to discover baby Abby. Police say an officer did see a child, but didn't recognise it as Abby.
Police visiting the address on the first occasion were given information about the birth of a baby, which was supported by a plausible explanation as to the circumstances surrounding the baby's birth.
While Roger and Karen Humphries will be starting to rebuild their new family life, senior officers say they'll be conducting a thorough review of the police handling of the investigation. Mike Mackay, BBC News, Nottingham.
2 Britons and an Australian are feared dead 3 months after being kidnapped in Cambodia. A Foreign Office spokesman said that evidence was mounting to suggest Dominic Chappell, Tina Domini and the Australian Kelly Wilkinson had been killed by their captors, believed to be Khmer Rouge guerrillas.
The families of the 3 kidnapped victims had travelled to Cambodia, still hopeful of finding them alive. With the protection of government soldiers, they then made their way to a small Cambodian village near to where the abduction took place in April to appeal to the local people for information. 25-year-old Dominic Chappell, his Australian girlfriend Kelly Wilkinson and another Briton, Tina Domini, were seized at gunpoint, apparently by Khmer Rouge bandits. They'd been returning to the southern port of Sihanoukville where they ran a restaurant. Today, the Australian Foreign Minister said evidence had been found, which led the authorities to conclude that all 3 were dead. Fears shared by the London family of Dominic Chappell, who received ransom demands after he was taken hostage.
Even knowing the recent history of Cambodia, I just find it so difficult to just accept that people can be just murdered in cold blood like that for just being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I think it's a tremendous waste of, if it is 3 persons' lives, they had a lot to offer and a lot to give, and it's such a shocking waste.
While the Australian government has condemned what appears to be the work of the Khmer Rouge, the Foreign Office remains sensitive about the reports. A spokesman said there is strong circumstantial evidence that all 3 are dead, but further investigations are being carried out to try to establish beyond doubt the fate of the 2 Britons and the Australian woman. John McIntyre, BBC News at the Foreign Office.
The IRA say they murdered a Belfast woman who they claimed was a police informer and dumped her body close to the Irish border. A woman's body was discovered this morning near Osleigh in County Fermanagh, but hasn't been formally identified. Security forces from both sides of the border have cordoned off the area. Astronomers have witnessed 5 massive explosions on the planet Jupiter as fragments from the Shoemaker Levy collided with the planet. Larger explosions are expected later this week.
They called it the biggest explosion in the solar system for hundreds of years. Half an hour after the first comet fragment went in, the impact was still visible. The cloud of debris spread out for thousands of miles and was over 1,000 miles high. The astronomers were jubilant.
We're going to see things and we're going to learn a lot. That's the good news tonight.
This sequence of pictures, taken minutes apart, shows how the fireball developed. The top image shows it rising over Jupiter's horizon. Then, in the lower pictures, it spreads out and flattens. British researchers in Hawaii captured this image.
This is the image of the third impact here, and just by it, from 10 hours previously, is the image of the first impact, and it has lasted much, much longer than we ever expected. There's no doubt that the next week is going to be very exciting. We've seen 3 rather minor impacts, and we've got some very big impacts to come, particularly on Tuesday and Wednesday. There's possibilities that we may see, for instance, completely new weather formations on Jupiter and long-lasting features that we will see for years to come.
The results so far show the pessimists have been confounded. For the next week, the world of astronomy will be agog. James Wilkinson, BBC News.
The World Cup final kicks off in California in just over 2 hours' time. Brazil appears to have no team problems, but there are grave doubts over the fitness of Italy's star player Roberto Baggio.
The best tournament since 1970, with a closing ceremony and final to match. That's the expectation in Pasadena, where they're putting the finishing touches to a spectacular that may yet attract a worldwide TV audience of 2 billion. Claims regarding the fitness of Italy's injured star striker are less extravagant. Roberto Baggio's chances of playing have improved, but are still 50-50. I will decide, he said late last night, but coach Arrigo Sacchi may not know the decision until he reaches the dressing room. But Baggio's goal scoring at New Jersey's Giants Stadium has already made its mark. The pitch on which he scored 2 goals to beat Bulgaria in the semi-final is being sold off. There are no shortage of takers.
Right here on this turf, Baggio has walked on. He has probably scored a goal on. This is going to be on my front lawn today, and it's going to be a little Italian heritage that I have.
The favourites Brazil, meanwhile, are unchanged. We respect Italy, said goalkeeper Taffarel, but the moment belongs to us. The preceding moments, in fact, have belonged to Messrs Domingo, Carreras and Pavarotti. Their World Cup concert last night was attended by, amongst others, former Presidents Reagan and Bush. Rob Bonnet, BBC News.
Nick Price of Zimbabwe has won the Open Golf Championship at Turnberry. Price, who's twice finished runner-up, trailed Sweden's Jesper Parnevik for most of the final round.
It had all the makings of a classic final round, with so many bunched at the top of the leaderboard. But such was the tension, Fuzzy Zeller was able to take a 2-stroke lead with the first birdie any of the leading contenders had mustered. For a while, Tom Watson's mastery of the short irons suggested a mounting challenge. But before long, the putting demons returned to torment him as 4 shots disappeared in 2 holes. Suddenly, others were being drawn into closer contention, and when Ronan Rafferty spectacularly took advantage of a dropped shot from Zeller, 5 men shared the lead. Among them, Rafferty's fellow Ulsterman David Faherty, in outstanding form all day with the putter, and the unspectacular but ever consistent Nick Price. To break the deadlock, it was going to take something out of the ordinary. Jesper Parnevik, as the son of a Swedish comedian, is certainly that, and a string of 3 successive birdies took him out on his own. And when a delightful chip at the 17th set up yet another birdie, the championship seemed his. But an unforgettable twist was around the corner, as a wayward approach to the last cost him a shot. Incredibly, moments later, the dogged Price, twice a runner-up, improbably eagled the 17th to take the lead. His unbounded elation and the Swede's dejection said it all. And a short while ago, Price seized his moment. Open champion at last. Kevin Geary, BBC News.
And that's it. The main news tonight follows the World Cup final at approximately 10:35.
Programmed by a million years of evolution, with an incredible capacity to nurture its young, one species dominates the natural world. Mankind, with 3,000 gestures and the most expressive face of any animal ever to walk the planet. In a major new documentary seen under the microscope, in a compelling portrait of the human species. Never before has human behavior been observed in such detail. The Human Animal, beginning Wednesday the 27th of July on BBC One.
A very good evening to you. A lot of dry weather in this coming week, but we've got low pressure fairly close to the south now. That's got some rain down across Normandy, and that's pushing its way across the channel just at the moment. I think the area is at risk for some thundery showers through this evening and tonight. The Isle of Wight eastwards up across in towards Kent as well. But for most of us, a dry evening, a lot of sunshine, and a dry and a clear night as well. Now, still that chance of some thundery showers in the extreme southeast tomorrow morning. But for the bulk of the country, it's going to be another dry day with a good deal of sunshine, although in the far northwest, the cloud thickening up, I think, later in the day. Still quite a stiff northeasterly breeze coming down through the eastern part of the channel, but not as strong as it has been today, and top temperatures consequently up as high as 25 degrees or 77 Fahrenheit. But I think it's going to feel cooler along that eastern coast, more pleasantly cool probably, around about 19 degrees. That's it. Bye for now.
As a lead-up to the World Cup football, which of course reaches its climax in a couple of hours live here on BBC One, we're joined now by Radio 2 for that musical extravaganza featuring three of the world's greatest tenors. In Los Angeles, our host is Desmond Lynham.